Hi, this is Dr. Joe Green, head pastor of St. Paul Missionary Baptist Church located in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, also the founder of the 2019 movement, and I want to share a couple of thoughts with you. Last year, around this time, a little bit, maybe not quite, a little bit less than a year ago, I did a video about why wouldn't stand with Black Lives Matter and took some flack for it. Got a lot of support, but I also got a lot of flack because people didn't understand what I was saying. And whenever I give some type of insight or information, I don't do it based on my emotions. I don't do it based on what reacting to what I see now. I try to do an in-depth study of the history of behind things. I try to look at things under the surface, but more importantly, I try to use discernment and also look at things from the biblical lens. And so, and I outline why I didn't support the Black Lives Matter movement. So one of the things that really became clear is people couldn't separate the concept or the idea or the phrase Black Lives Matter from the actual organization. And those are two distinctly different things. Also, the fact of the matter is that there was no one out there that was saying that Black lives did not matter. It was just that the organization itself, because the organization itself is a lot different from the concept of trying to preserve Black lives, and they had a different agenda. And I believe very strongly, and still believe, based on what I see now, that it's quite clear now, almost a year later, that their agenda was not our agenda. So the agenda of the Black Lives Matter movement was not about trying to improve the overall quality of life and the value of life for Black people. It was a socialist movement, right? It was based on Marxism, also the LGBTQ movement. So Aliza Garza and Patrice Cullors and the founders of Black Lives Matter were not only were they gay, openly lesbian, but they also said that when we say Black Lives Matter, we say Black trans lives matter. So it wasn't just on Black people, it was primarily Black trans lives. That their agenda was for LGBTQ, was for socialism, is for liberal Democrats. That was the primary focus. And the reason that, for one, and I'll get into some of the other points, is that during the same time after the George Floyd death of George Floyd, there was a lot of violence around the country, and many times there were Black on Black crime, which Black people were killed. So in Chicago, one weekend soon after the George Floyd murder, there was a 5-year-old that got was caught in the middle of a crossfire, a Black on Black crime. The 5-year-old was caught in the middle of a crossfire and died, but yet they were silent about that. During the same time that there were riots to riot or to protest the death of George Floyd and the perceived rash of white police officers killing Black males, there were thousands upon thousands of Black people that were losing their lives, whether it was gang violence, whether it was, some of the things that happened in our Black neighborhoods around the country, but yet Black Lives Matter was silent to those issues. So anyway, let's get into this. So first and foremost, the Black Lives Matter movement was an activist movement that's pushing a different agenda. So you have a person that's very prominent by the name of Tamika Mowry, and she recently was on an award show singing. I think it was the Grammys, and also she has a Cadillac commercial now. So she's making a lot of money because of the visibility she gained by being a so-called Black activist. Now, the interesting thing I thought was very telling was the fact that, to me, it's very stereotypical for a Black activist to do a Cadillac commercial because of the stereotypes of Black people in Cadillacs, right? But yes, she did it. I'm sure she got paid nicely. I'm sure she got paid a lot of money to be on an award show performing, high level of visibility. So she's being able to profit off of her perceived community activism. But to me, that's hints that you are selling the system out, or you are selling out to the system, I should say, because why would you be on these major platforms if your true intent is to help to improve simply the lives of Black people? Now, another pieces of evidence that shows that they're not really for us is you have Tamir Rice, who's from, I think it's Cleveland, Ohio, was a young man, 12 or 13 years old, that got shot by the police, and he had a toy gun. So Tamir Rice's mother has recently come out very very aggressively and very negatively against the Black Lives Matter movement and Tamika Mallory and the rapper Myson, because although they used Tamir Rice and his image and his name in order to promote their agenda of supposedly fighting for Black people, they never even knew, and she said it herself to Samara Rice, I believe her name is, but she's the mother of Tamir Rice. She says they never even had a conversation with her. So how could you be out there fighting on behalf of people, and especially specifically use the name of a young man by the name of Tamir Rice, but yet you have no contact with the family? And so they've made a lot of money. Obviously, they're making a lot of money. They have a lot of support. Why is the family not benefiting from the support that they are receiving? And I'm not speculating on whether or not that's the case. The parents have been outspoken. Mike Brown's father, Mike Brown, who was murdered in Ferguson or was killed in Ferguson, Missouri at the hands of a white police officer. His father is now challenging Black Lives Matter because in the year 2020, it's estimated that they received at least $90 million in support. Black Lives Matter, I'm going to say that again, received approximately $90 million in support in the year 2020. Yet the families, Mike Brown in particular, his family has received none of the resources. So obviously to me, and this is my word, it seems like a scam to me, because if Black Lives Matter and Black Lives Matter gained a lot of momentum after the Ferguson incident where Mike Brown was killed. So if they receive $90 million in contributions, and a large part of that is from the families of Mike Brown and Tamir Rice, or the name of these people, I should say, why is the family not receiving compensation? I'm sure that people support these organizations would support the families of these people that were killed, that lost their lives. But it's quite obvious the fact that it's not really about that. It's about other agendas that don't really help our community, right? And one of the reasons I was so vocal last year about not supporting Black Lives Matters and movements like that is because traditionally Black people have been taken advantage of. People have profited off the backs of the Black community, but yet the Black community stays in the same situation, right? So the LGBTQ piggybacked off the civil rights movement, and they are gaining a lot of influence and power all throughout the country, all throughout the society. But yet but now they've basically hopscotch over the Black community, right? So they used us, they used our pain and associated with us. And another fact of that is this Equality Act, HR 5. HR 5 is going to give special rights to LGBTQ, sexual orientation and gender identity. And they are redefining the 1964 Civil Rights Act that was meant to protect discrimination against people based on their race, ethnicity, etc. Now they are including sexual orientation and gender identity as a protected classification of people. And those are two distinctly different things. Whether or not you agree with LGBTQ or not is irrelevant. Those are two distinctly different things. LGBTQ is a lifestyle, behavior, or a life choice, right? But being Black or being of a certain skin color or ethnicity is simply a state of existence. So there's a difference in a state of existence and a lifestyle choice. Because, for instance, if a gay person is gay, if they're in the privacy of their own home and we don't know that they're gay, then there's nothing that's affecting them. A Black person, whether or not I tell you I'm Black or not, I'm Black. People were being discriminated against. They were, and the discrimination was they weren't allowed to live at certain places. At University of Alabama, when George Wallace was the governor, he specifically said that no Black people could attend the University of Alabama. He didn't say even if you scored 100% on all your exams, if you were all A student, if you scored SATs, perfect score SATs, that was irrelevant. He said if you were Black, you couldn't go to the school. That's a stark contrast to someone not being allowed to marry someone of the same sex or something along those lines. But discrimination, the civil rights movement protected people who were being discriminated against or mistreated simply because of their ethnicity, their race, or something along those lines, right? Those are two distinctly different things, right? But because they have done such a good job at marketing and programming Black people, we don't understand it. We should be offended. I personally get offended when someone attaches sexual orientation and gender identity to the same cause as someone being mistreated simply because of their race, ethnicity, or skin color. Those are two different things. So we have to be careful of that, because what they do is they profit off of our pain, and then we get left behind, right? We get ignored and left behind. And what they use, and you've heard me say this before, I'll re-mention it, is critical race theory. Critical race theory is one of the agendas that they use in order to manipulate and socially engineer society as a whole. And because they do such a good job at marketing this ideology, they deceive people, and people get taken advantage of, right? So now they're going to start this whole thing of Asian hate. Like, there's a rash of Asian hate. And part of the reason that they're going to use that is because of protecting China. So communist China, because if you recall, when I started to talk about Black Lives Matter, we started talking about Marxism. Communism is an offshoot of Marxism. Communism, Marxism, and socialism are all different branches of the same tree. And so because China is very influential and very wealthy in the world and have paid a lot of people off and have flexed their power, the powers that be are going out of their way to try to protect China. And so because of that, they want to ignore the fact that the coronavirus, which is also known as the Wuhan virus or the China virus, the first cases originated in China, and they have evidence that says that it stemmed from a lab in Wuhan, China, right? So because they're trying to cover that up and rewrite history, they are going to try to say that there's a rash of Asian hate cases. So if you do say that it's the China virus, they're going to say that's racism. But again, I want to remind people that being Chinese is not a race. It's an ethnicity. It's a completely different thing. If you start talking about the various races, there's three primary races that anthropologists separate humanity into. And of course, race is a social construct, but you have Negroid, Mongoloid, and Caucasoid. So Caucasoid would be white or Caucasian. You have Negroid, which would be black, primarily originating from Africa. And then you would have Mongoloid, which would be your Asian groups, Chinese, Japanese, Filipino, Vietnamese, Korean. Those are all be considered of the same race. China is not a race. A nation is not a race. Chinese is not a race. It is a ethnicity or nationality, however you want to look at it. But of course, because they do such a good job with critical race theory and promoting this idea of racism, because racism is a trigger word and it's used to manipulate and control speech and thought, they're going to try to push this idea that there is a rash of people hating on Asian people, but that is a veil to cover up the fact that that they are now protecting China and the interests of the Chinese. And I think it's very interesting as well, because a lot of these corporations that are trying to jump on the bandwagon and say that they're for, anti-racism or anti-bigotry, most of these companies actually profit off of the Chinese communist system. So Apple, Nike, and companies like that, Nike for years have used cheap labor from China, because in China they don't have the same regulations as far as making sure workers have the rights. There's no unions in a communist nation. For years, Nike had got criticized because they were using sweatshops where they had children that were being put to work, or they would be paying these workers next to nothing to in these horrible conditions on creating these sneakers, or products, I should say, for these large companies. Nike, Apple had a big factory. I'm sure they probably still do. And their factory in China actually had suicide nets around the factory because the working conditions were so horrible that they had high rates of suicide. So these same people, they get on this platform and they start to virtual signal. And when they virtual signal, they try to get you to believe or to say that, they're against racism. And I think it's interesting. People like LeBron James, you know, who's almost a billionaire, if he's not a billionaire, he defended China when the general manager from Houston Rockets criticized China for their mistreatment in you know, and the people that were protesting oppression. But yet LeBron James took the side of the Chinese, and it was all based on money. So if he's really fighting for anti-discrimination, you need to fight for anti-discrimination in every realm, not just when it pertains to you, and to support mistreating people when you can profit off of it. That's very hypocritical, but that just goes to show you that there's an agenda out there, and that the agenda is not what people make it want you to believe. And so who are the real benefactors of the Black Lives Matter movement? You have the LGBTQ community. You have the Democratic Party, because part of a lot of the funds that were funneled through Black Lives Matter was for what was called Project Blue. And Project Blue actually was actually contributed money to the Democratic Party, the Democrat Party. And so the LGBTQ, the Democrat Party, and things like that are the ones who actually benefit from the Black Lives Matter movement. And they don't really, it's not really for helping the Black community as a whole, right? So if Black on Black crime, they don't go in and address that issue, which is the primary, the number one way that Black males are killed is they are victims of homicide. But they ignore that. Right. So if I really wanted to preserve Black lives, then I should hit the issues that have the largest impact on taking the lives of Black people. I'm going to say that again. If I really want to preserve Black lives, I should focus on the things that have the largest impact on taking the lives of Black people. So, for instance, let's do the numbers. If out of 1,000 people, probably 800 to 900 of them would be the victims of homicide, and the vast majority of them would be at the hands of another Black person. So Black people in America, unfortunately, Black males are the number one perpetrators and victims of homicide in America. So if I really wanted to preserve the lives of Black people, why wouldn't I tackle that issue? When you talk about Black people unarmed Black males being killed by the police, it represents only 4% of all those who are killed by police. I'm going to say that again. Only 4% of those killed by police are unarmed Black males. 4%. So, and in the community, less than 0.5% of murders in the Black community are white officers, white police officers. Less than 0.5%. So why would we spend 99% of our time trying to solve an issue that only accounts for 0.5%? There is no type of scenario where that makes sense. No type of scenario at all. The example I use is if I went to the hospital emergency room and someone had severed my jugular vein and I was bleeding out profusely, and I had a tumor on my big toe, don't take care of the tumor first. Deal with the blood gushing out of my neck, right? If I was having a heart attack, but I also had if I had a heart attack and I also had, a cyst on my leg, don't deal with the cyst first. Deal with the heart attack. Deal with the more pressing issue. Deal with the one that's the most clear and present danger. But of course, because of the propaganda, because we have been being manipulated, we end up spending more time focusing on the thing that represents the least, threatening thing for our community. And ultimately, I want to say, and I'll say this over and over again, you'll hear me say this probably in almost all my videos, especially when I'm addressing these issues. The primary resolution for Black America is family and faith. Family and faith. I'm going to say that again. The primary solution is not governmental funding. It's not more social programs. It's not defunding the police. None of those things are the real solution for our problems. The major problem in our community is the breakdown of the family, the lack of fathers, and a corrupting of our culture. What do I mean by that? And I'm going to do another video. We're going to talk a little bit about Lil Nas X and WAP and some of those other people. I did a video already. So when you get a chance, please like and subscribe to my channel. Please share the video if you find it beneficial. But the primary issue, the best resolution for our community is family and faith. What do I mean by that? We need to do things that strengthen the family unit, because strong family units create strong communities. And when you have strong family units and strong communities, you don't have to worry about minimum wage, because you'll have more entrepreneurs. You'll have Black-owned businesses, right? You'll have more educated people, because overwhelmingly it'll show that communities that have low, that don't have fathers in the household perform or underperform academically. When you have communities that have high rates of fatherlessness or unwed pregnancies, you have high rates of school dropouts, of drug use, violent crime, and incarceration. That's just a fact. You look at all the communities that have those issues, the weakened family unit, you have all those things, right? So in America, let's say, for instance, and then I'll get to my final point. In America right now, the highest household income is those who are Nigerian from West Africa. They have the highest household income in America right now in 2021. Number two is the Asian community. So Asians, also India is considered Asian, people from India. So you have the Nigerians that's number one, you have the Asian community that's number two, you have European Jews that's number three, and you have European white people that's number four right now, as in regards to highest household income. Now, what do those have? The Nigerians and the Asians and the European Jews have the strongest family units. They have the most pronounced cultures, and their culture is usually around some type of high moral value or their faith. And it doesn't even have to be Christianity, but their faith. Most of the Nigerians that I met are Christians from West Africa. Most of the Asians are, usually they have some kind of faith. I very rarely will meet an Asian who doesn't have some kind of religious belief. And of course, European Jews are people that practice Judaism. And so those are strong cultures and strong families. Also, people from the West Indies. So when you look at people from Jamaica outperform academically, I should say the West Indies, so Jamaica and other places, they outperform Black people, African Americans, as far as educationally and income. These are all facts and statistics. This is not just my opinion. So if we believe that white supremacy and racism is the number one issue, why is it that Black people, that Africans, Asians, and European Jews are are outperforming, or the highest performers as far as household income? If white supremacy is a thing, none of these three are considered white. They're not considered white. So anyway, but it's the breakdown of the family, it's the lack of faith, and it's the lack of culture and community. Our culture has become very corrupted, which is why some of the primary people that are moving the Black culture, these hip hop people like the Cardi B's and the Megan Thee Stallion or the Little Nas X, they all represent a corrupted culture that violate faith and family values, which has a trickle down effect to the rest of the community. But anyway, this has been Joe Green. Until next time, please like and share the video. And I'll do another one after this. We're going to talk a little bit more about Little Nas X and Montero and all the Satanism that is being paraded around us in our common culture. Be blessed. Talk to you soon.